So hello and welcome to our 13th Made Summer Web Series session. This is going to be a really fun one, as you can already tell by the screen. But it's also because we have Dave Byrne of TikTok here with us today. So aside from being Director of Strategic Trade Relations at TikTok, Dave is also a storytelling and presentation coach, Toastmasters president, and a part-time comedian. So we are in really good hands here today. And so I want to let Dave jump right in, but before I do that, I just want to lay down the rules of the road here. So if you do have a question, feel free to pop it in the chat box. You can ask them throughout the presentation, and Dave will stop at certain points to answer those questions. And then at the end of the presentation, if you want to raise your hand, we will let you unmute and you can ask the question directly to Dave. So feel free to, utilize either of those two options to ask questions. And I think that's it. So Dave, if you want to take it away, go ahead.
Sure, thank you. And thank you for the introduction. So just to give you a little bit more background about me, I have been at TikTok now since December of last year, so only 7 months. Before that, I was at Google for 11 years, where I worked on our packaging of solutions for advertisers and for users. So basically coming up with the story that Google wants to tell about our products and services. If you've ever seen like one of the conferences, the external conferences that we've done, I often also coached the presenters at those. So I did a lot of presentation coaching there. Before that, I had actually, in university, I set up a record company in Ireland where I grew up. I also mentioned that part-time stand-up comic. So if you're familiar with Jim Gaffigan, Jerry Seinfeld, Michelle Wolf, I've opened for those three in the past. I haven't been able to do much comedy during this time. Just because of COVID, so don't expect this to be funny. I am awful right now. I'm so rusty, so apologies for that. You are not going to get a load of laughs out of this. The most entertaining thing that you'll see from this is probably my background. Other than that, what I'll be kind of taking you through today is just some of the lessons that I've learned over my career in regards to storytelling, the advice that I give to businesses, startup founders, but also people that are looking to create their first CV and get out and start interviewing for the first time. So all of this is about like arming people with the skills that they need. So quickly in the chat box, I'd love to kind of hear from all of you, or even feel free to come off mute. Like, who are some of like your favorite storytellers? Like, what are the kind of the storytellers that really inspire you? And it could be from TV, film, or business. Tolkien, yeah. Anthony, straight in there. Dave Chappelle, fantastic. I love Dave Chappelle. One of the best things I heard about Dave Chappelle is gone beyond storyteller. He's now like a modern day philosopher. I love that. Trevor Noah, fantastic. Apple, Steve Jobs, Hassan Minaj, these are great. A lot of comedians, I'm seeing a lot of comedians. You're putting me to shame here. I'm nowhere near as good as any of these guys. My grandma, oh, that's lovely. Lady Gaga. So Richard Branson is a fantastic one. I love his autobiographies, just the stories that he's able to tell and the imagery that he uses. But the thing here is that every single one of these people that you've listed, they are fantastic storytellers. But interestingly enough, like the main difference between you and any of these storytellers isn't that they have a unique ability that you don't possess. In fact, anybody can be a storyteller. So if you're telling somebody about your weekend, you're telling a story. If you are sharing a video that you saw online, you are sharing a story. Everybody has the potential to be a storyteller. The big difference between these guys and you is just that they have worked on it, they've crafted it, they've honed it, and this is something that is constantly that they constantly work on. So I myself, like, I do this coaching, but I also still take storytelling classes. I still read storytelling books. I still learn from others because it's an ongoing process. And I saw Apple came up there, Steve Jobs came up there. And let me just like tell you about Steve Jobs, because everybody remembers Steve Jobs as this amazing storyteller, but he wasn't always like that. In fact, back in the 1980s, when he was running Apple, he was releasing this computer called the Lisa, and it was $10,000 for the Lisa. It was $10,000 to buy that. With inflation, that's about $25,000 now today to buy a personal computer. So Steve Jobs thought, I need to sell this. So he took out an 8-page ad in the New York Times to talk about. Sorry, it was the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. 8-page ad to talk about the Lisa. 8 pages. Right? And what he did was he listed the memory that it had, how good the keyboard was, how good the screen resolution was. He listed all of these things. And it failed. The ad was seen as one of the worst ads that have ever been run in these papers. And the reason being is that it didn't speak to the users. Like, why should they spend $10,000 of their money on something where they don't even know what it's trying to solve for them? How is it going to help them? How is it going to do anything for them? There was no story being told. All it was geek speak. And it focused on the features and not on the users, the customers, and the people that are actually going to be utilizing this product. And what we'll kind of speak through today is just some of the ways that he then developed into a great storyteller, and then how you can apply that either for if you are starting a business, how you can start pitching for funding using storytelling skills. If you're applying for a job, how you can tell a story in a job interview. Or if you're just working on a marketing team, how you can create great stories there. Now, if I compare Steve Jobs in the 1980s to the 2000s, does anybody remember the Zune? Or has anybody heard of the Zune? There's a few nods, but more head shakes and more kind of, okay. So a few people have heard of it. But to give you an idea, when the iPod was released, the Zune was Microsoft's MP3 player that they were also promoting at this time. Now, I actually had a Zune, and I'll say when it was released, I absolutely loved it. But one of the things that Microsoft did was, if you look at any of the ads from like the early 2000s about the Zune, it mentions the memory, the screen resolution. It mentions how much battery life there is, right? They were falling into the same traps that Steve Jobs did with the Lisa back in the early 80s. It was just listing features. Does anybody remember, does anybody know what the ad for the original iPod said? No? It was one line: 1,000 songs in your pocket. Right? Now think about how far that has come with Apple. Like, think about how far that's come from the 1980s to the 2000s, going from an 8-page ad trying to say, hey, like, here's all of these things that you should, here's all of these features that we have, to telling a very succinct, clear story: 1,000 songs in your pocket. It's fantastic for several reasons. Firstly, it's a strong controlling idea. And as I talk through, I'll explain what a controlling idea is. But the main thing is it understood the audience, right? 1,000 songs in your pocket. If you're thinking about any story that you're trying to tell, the thing that you often find is that in business, oftentimes when you're trying to tell a story, you want to make your potential customer or your potential employee or your potential investor the hero of that story. And what Apple did here, what Steve Jobs did here, was they placed the customer at the center of the story. And the great thing is that they could build the world around it. 1,000 songs in your pocket. If you're a jogger, you could imagine yourself going on long runs with it. If you're on a, if you're commuting to work and you have like a long train journey, you can see yourself with 1,000 songs in your pocket. The interesting thing here as well is that the original iPod didn't hold 1,000 songs. It held like 1,096 or something along those lines. But the thing is, though, is that the actual facts didn't matter as much as what it meant to the customer, to the recipient of that story. So as we go through this, I'm going to like refer back to this and also give some more examples, business examples of how that's done. But one thing I'll also do is I'll also use examples from movies and TV shows as we go through it to show how like the kind of the storytelling that you can use in movies and TV can also be applied to business. So apologies in advance if I ruin any movies that you haven't seen. I will try to keep my references to movies that are pretty much well known at this point, but sorry in advance. With this, I saw that there was a couple of questions. Giselle, was it just an Apple? So I'm not sure if you're asking like if the Apple iPod versus the Microsoft Zune, but it was Apple and Steve Jobs like kind of created the messaging there. You mentioned you read lots of storytelling books. Would you recommend The Hero with 1,000 Faces? I've heard good reviews. Do you know what? If you're thinking about, I actually have a great list of storytelling books that I'll actually share with you all. Actually, I think I've posted it on LinkedIn a while ago, so I'll see if I can dig it out. But there's ones that are really, really good that I would highly recommend. There's ones as well where sometimes I go onto Audible. I think The Hero with 1,000 Faces, did I have that on Audible rather than in print? There are certain books that when the author reads them himself, or you have somebody that's passionate about it reads it, you'll often find, I think Hero with 1,000 Faces, I think I got an Audible version that was like one of the reissues, because I think Hero with 1,000 Faces is like, what, 60 years old at this point? But anyway, I digress. Excellent. So yeah, I'll share the book list afterwards, towards the end of this. But for now, I'll just jump back into the presentation, if that's okay. So I mentioned in the previous slide, the controlling idea. So the controlling idea, I wanted to spend a little bit of time on to explain what this is. So the controlling idea is very simple. If you're trying to make sure that the information you want people to remember and subsequently communicate to others, the information that's critical to your story, the controlling idea is what encapsulates all of those things. You know, if you ever watch a Super Bowl commercial, sometimes they may have a 30-second spot that's a little bit funny, a little bit surprising, a little bit entertaining. But if their message that they're trying to convey isn't clear, you may remember the Super Bowl commercial more so than you remember the actual brand itself or what the brand wants you to do. So the controlling idea in any kind of story, and especially in business terms, is basically it's that single sentence that's describing the how and why about what you are or what your product is or what your service is, and how and why it's going to improve the lives of the people that use it, and almost giving them that impetus that they feel like that they need to take action then. It's often the direction then that the story will grow from. So the controlling idea is something that you may want to work on, but you may not want to explicitly state in your story. It's something that it's almost like if you've ever read like, okay, well, I'm about to go see this movie. Can somebody give me a summary of what the movie is? It's the summary. It's not the actual story itself. It's the summary. It's the thing that the story gets built off of. It's the foundational level for the story. In business, what I say is that this should be your light bulb moments, your moment of inspiration. So in other words, like, what is the thing that you see as like my product, my service can change the world, and here's how it can change the world. That's your controlling idea. That's where the story should be built from. If you're thinking about how you're thinking of communicating in a job interview, for example, your controlling idea may be that you are the best person to take the company that you're interviewing with from A to B, from being a good company to an excellent company. You're the person, you are the best person. That is your controlling idea. Then your stories that you tell in that job interview grows from that idea. Everything comes naturally from that then. So that's the kind of the concept behind the controlling idea. But let me explain actually, like, how do you actually make a controlling idea? Like, what is the best way of like coming up with some ideas? The controlling idea, firstly, imagine your ideal world. Like, imagine the ideal scenario that your product or service is going to create. Imagine the possibilities that are available to people that use your product or service. If you're doing a job interview, it's the imagining the ideal world of you working at this business. What does that business look like in 5 years' time? Have you turned a scrappy startup into the next billion-dollar unicorn? It's the way as well that in job interviews that you would like to be remembered. If somebody says, oh, we hired this person, and then it's your last day on the job and they're describing the impact that you had on the business, what would you like them to say about you? The second thing is like, communicate the feeling that you want to get across, the emotion that you want to get across, somehow that you want a certain feeling. Now, this could be a positive or a negative emotion. You know, a lot of like movies and TV shows, they sometimes take you through from stories that bring you negative emotions, but then other ones that bring you positive ones. In business, what I usually find is that research has shown time and time again that positive emotions resonate more in business than negative ones. So you want a feeling that using your product or service gets. You want that positive feeling of like, hey, if I buy this product, my life will be better. If I use this service, my life will be better. If I hire this person, my company will be better. If I invest in this company, myself, I will feel better. I will feel like I've invested in the future. Those kind of positive emotions are more likely to result in action. And that's where you also need to kind of visualize your audience taking action. Like, the controlling idea doesn't necessarily say, buy my product, but it gives them an image of what life could be like and a positive feeling, to the point that they will then say, okay, I need to buy this. I need to have this. I need to partake in this. So now this may sound very simplistic, but I recently mentored a company where we spent 4 hours working on their controlling idea. Because the thing is, as I said, this is the foundational level of like the stories that they're going to tell. And we really workshopped what their controlling idea was, to make sure that they could then build really powerful stories. Because the great thing with a good controlling idea is that if you have a great controlling idea, you can tell multiple stories then from that same controlling idea. So let's just say if my controlling idea is, let's just say if I've created a company that is going to provide sustainable cutlery to every restaurant in New York City, so that whenever they do takeout, it's sustainable cutlery that is delivered and people can wash them, reuse them. And my whole reasoning behind that is, I imagine a world where New York City is a zero waste city, right? That is my ideal scenario. Maybe my controlling idea is New York City is the greatest city in the world. Imagine if New York City could be even greater. Imagine if New York City could be the city that every other city aspires to be when it comes to being clean and sustainable. That is what my product aims to do, right? So that, if that's kind of like the starting of a controlling idea there, then you can start telling multiple stories. So maybe the story that I tell to a investor, for example, is like, hey, I've seen that you have invested in other energy efficient and sustainable projects. So let me tell you about my sustainable project. If you're talking to a potential first employee, you may be then turning around saying like, hey, don't you want to be part of something amazing? Imagine how you will feel knowing that you are building the future of this city that is that you are going to be proud to live in, and that your children are going to be proud to be a part of as well. If you're talking to then potential customers, to restaurants, it's like, hey, imagine you as a restaurant knowing that what you're doing is not creating waste. Imagine how good that will look. Imagine people reviewing your business going like, oh, I'm really happy that they use sustainable products. It will look good for you and you'll feel good about it. So therefore, it's the same controlling idea, but you're telling different stories depending on the audience, right? So that's why a good controlling idea is important, because if you're able to come up with it, that's something that you're proud of, everything will flow from there. Now, I just saw a question there. So to clarify, would you say that in essence, a controlling idea is a synopsis with a theme? Very much so. I think like that's a great way of describing it. I think where I would say as well, on top of like the synopsis, it's like just making sure that, I think one thing with synopses is that we sometimes remove the emotion that you want to get across from synopses. So if you were talking about a synopsis of the movie The Dark Knight, the synopsis may be that, well, Batman comes up against his greatest foe, the Joker, and in a game of cat and mouse. That doesn't get across the emotion, or where it's like Batman comes up against his greatest foe, who's going to challenge his very core, his very thinking about what it means to be a good person and what it means to be a good symbol for other people. And I think there you start touching on the emotional aspect. So it's just important to make sure that there is an emotional element to it. Now, an example that I always use is if you want a very simple controlling idea, I may be taking my extended family out camping in August because all of our other holidays have been cancelled. So one of the things that my sister-in-law, she's worried about, she has 3 kids, and she's worried about 3 kids going camping. And the controlling idea that I've been working from is camping with small children can be a tiring and frustrating experience at the worst times, but an exceptionally rewarding experience in the long term, and a holiday that you will never forget. That is the controlling idea that I'm using. I'm bringing, one thing that I've done there is, what I've done with the emotion things, I've started with an emotion like frustration. I've acknowledged it, but then I'm bringing it up into a more positive one. And later on, I'll talk you through how you can start doing that more in business. I touched on this earlier, but facts are meaningless without an actual storyline. So if I told you a fact of, let's just say, if I was to say, I don't know, that maybe that, did you know that 50% of students in university right now won't continue on the same career path that they start when they graduate within 5 years? That just may be a random fact, but it's got no meaning there. So somebody could think of that and go, oh, that's really cool. Students are changing their mindset. They're exploring new ideas. They're exploring new things. That's really positive. But somebody else may be going, well, that means that they're not studying the right things in university. That means that they're not planning for the future enough. So that same fact can be viewed from 2 different angles, a positive one and a negative one. So what stories do is stories build off of facts. Like they may take a fact and then give the context around it. So that's where, again, that if you think of like the 1,000 songs in your pocket, there is a fact there that yes, you can have like approximately 1,000 songs, but it's the story around it that resonates with people. The other thing I'd say about this is that if if you, the stat that I was sharing recently from the digital side of things is that there is, for every single person on Earth, right, and every single minute, 1.2 megabytes of data is created. For every single person in the world, every single minute, 1.7 megabytes of data is created, right? People are inundated with information. They're inundated with facts constantly. Like, you open up Twitter, it's just a stream of facts and consciousness right there. People have so much facts. If you really want to cut through the noise, an emotional, evocative story is what will cut through the facts there. So if you are a marketer, you are trying to cut through all of the other marketing messages that people see on a daily basis that connects with people. If you are interviewing for a job, you are trying to cut through the 300 candidates that are going for a job with your story that connects with the person that's interviewing you. If you are somebody that's looking for investment from people, you are cutting through all of the other potential investors out there. If you are just stating facts, I guarantee you there are 100 other people doing exactly the same thing, stating facts. But what's unique about you is your story. And then the way that you can connect with people is then thinking about them and how you convey your story to them and make them a part of that story. So with that, I'm going to jump onto then the actual audience itself. So thinking about your audience, this is after you've kind of got your controlling idea, the story you say is going to also be dependent on the audience. I gave the example of talking to a investor, to a job recruiter, but the way that you need to think about this is that no story can work without understanding the potential reactions or the anticipations of the audience. Understanding the audience will help shape the way that your story expresses your vision, expresses your controlling ideas. And it will also determine some of the ways that the audience then can take action afterwards. So are they people that are going to invest? Are they going to buy? Are they going to share that message with other people? So when you're thinking about your audience, 4 questions come to mind every single time. What are they like? What do they need and want? Now I'm going to pause here for need and want, because these are actually 2 different things. Because again, going back to Apple, Apple used to say something very simple, which was that Steve Jobs used to say, I don't tell people what they want, I tell people what they need. And if we go back to Henry Ford, one of the things that he said was, if I sold people what they wanted, I would sell them a faster horse. I wouldn't be selling them a car, right? So sometimes what people need is very different from what people want. People may say they want, oh, I want I want this thing, but actually what they need is more of an emotional fulfillment. It's something that's actually getting to the root of the issue that they are trying to solve for what they think they need. Sometimes what you're providing with them may not be something that they've seen before, but it's something that they need. So really thinking about what they need and want is often thinking about like, okay, well, they say to us, for example, like, I'm in a basement right now. I'm in my in-laws basement. It's getting cold in here. I may think to myself, hey, I need a hoodie right now. But you as like maybe a indoor heating company may also provide me with a need that I have. The need isn't for the hoodie, it's for the actual heat. It's for the feeling of comfort. So sometimes your message is actually getting further down to the root cause of the issue that somebody is facing. The next thing is what's important to them. So depending on their audience, again, if you start talking about sustainability to somebody that doesn't care about sustainability, it's not going to resonate. But if you start talking about, you know, if there's an investor who you know is so money focused that you start talking in their language, you're going to connect with them. I'm actually doing a piece right now. I'm writing an article right now. I'm watching every single episode of Shark Tank and writing a report on what resonates best. And do you know what I've noticed as a consistent trend? is that more frequently, the most successful people are the people that come in to the sharks and pick out one shark in particular and go, this one's for you. This one is for you. This is a product, a service, a company that I want you to invest in, and here's why it's for you, right? Those kind of people are more successful than the ones that try to pitch for all four more frequently, because they've understood like what is important to that one particular shark. So I am going to talk to that one particular shark. I'm going to ignore the others, focus on this one, and tell them something that's important to them and show them why my business is important to them, right? I haven't fully finished that article. When I do, I'll have exact percentages. There is literally over 220 hours of this. Thankfully, because I haven't had to commute to an office lately, I've been able to watch it on repeat. Oh, any tips on understanding your audience? Great question. I fully endorse LinkedIn stalking. I stalk the hell out of people on LinkedIn. So one thing that I always see is like, have they posted up anything on LinkedIn? Have they shared any particular articles? You know, actually doing that kind of research is important. One other thing that I've done before is I was actually about to go into a big meeting earlier on this week, and I had never met the guy before. When I went onto LinkedIn, I just started seeing if there's any mutual connections. There wasn't. So, but I noticed that there was a kind of a connection to a connection. So I actually reached out to them and just go, hey, this is going to sound really random, but I'm actually about to meet this person that you're connected with. I saw that you worked with them previously. I just wanted to kind of get a gauge of like what you would recommend to somebody meeting them for the first time. And that person, believe it or not, got back to me. They literally put in just 2 lines and they were like, hey, this person just likes straight talkers. Just be very open, be very honest. Don't beat around the bush. Just tell them what exactly you need and what you're looking for. That's all I needed. And it was great. So I highly recommend LinkedIn stalking. I probably shouldn't call it LinkedIn stalking. There's like, feels a little bit creepy calling it that, but that's the best I have right now, unfortunately. Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate that. The final thing is like how you can help them. Again, the big thing here is that if you come into any kind of session, if you come into a job interview, for example, and you just talk about how awesome you are, the job interview may go okay, but do you know who's going to exceed? Is the person that comes in and goes, I'm awesome, but I'm going to make your company awesome as well, right? Making sure that you always think about how you can help them. Like, what is the thing that will make them feel good? What is the thing that will make them feel like that you're the right person that they should invest in, that you're the right person to buy from and to work with in the future? Now, I want to go back to the chat box very quickly. So great characters. Think about great characters and stories. Like, who are some of the great characters and stories that you think of? Like, you know, the one that it always comes up, like Luke Skywalker also always comes up as like a great character. But like, who are some of the great characters that in TV and movies that you all have connected with? Iron Man, Tony Stark, Godfather, excellent, yeah. The Godfather is a really great example of like kind of an anti-villain. Yeah, Thomas More, Man for All Seasons, excellent. Thomas Shelby, love it. Wicked, Sandman. Neil Gaiman. Neil Gaiman's another fantastic storyteller. I love some of the imagery that he uses. Harry Potter, yeah. Harry Potter is actually a fantastic example of a very simple storytelling lesson that you can learn about characters and how they can be applied to business. Where oftentimes what you are looking for within a character, the one that connects with the audience, is actually somebody that we not just sympathize with. We don't sympathize with them to an extent. We also actively see ourselves as them, or we kind of think like, what would I do in their situation? You know, they are the kind of in every like basically what a good character often does in storytelling is they are a flawed character. They are somebody that is maybe they haven't achieved their full potential. Maybe they are experiencing troubles or challenges in their life, and we see ourselves like thinking, well, what would I do in that position? Or we kind of like remove ourselves from the real world and put ourselves in their position, and we imagine ourselves as like as overcoming these challenges alongside with them. We see these people moving from flawed individuals to better versions of themselves as the story goes on. And the thing is that this is meant this kind of storytelling is known as like the hero's journey, and it's meant to invoke as much empathy as possible. And within like great characters, what you're looking for is the humanity, and you are looking for something that you see within yourself. But when it comes to storytelling for business, what happens is that the characters that you use, the stories that you tell, are trying to make the person that you're speaking to the actual lead character in the story that you're saying. You are trying to make them the hero of the journey that you're about to take them through. This is a way for then, if you're doing marketing, it allows people to get immersed in an environment that they see themselves utilizing your product, your service. They see themselves investing in your business. They see themselves actively hiring you and like bringing you within the company itself. It's very simple. I wrote this article actually today about Mr. Mucus, the Mucinex, like green slimy blob thing, right? So one of the things that I highlighted in my article is that Mr. Mucinex is actually what I call a brand villain. They are the villain of each story, right? They are a manifestation of the struggle of being sick, right? They are the thing that in every single commercial, it's somebody at the cinema that he comes in and he's like, hey, how about this like chesty cough? And they're like, no, I've taken Mucinex. The thing we remember from those ads is Mr. Mucinex, but the idea is that we are meant to position ourselves as like, oh yeah, I've been in that position where I've wanted to go out when I'm feeling sick. Oh, and I've had that struggle. That's the struggle that I've had to overcome. He's a manifestation of the struggle that we all are trying to overcome. And we are putting ourselves, like by watching those commercials, also in similar positions and seeing that. That's the goal of those commercials. He's a brand villain, and we become the hero that are trying to fight against fight against him. And to put it in like a broader thing, like the brand then doesn't represent the hero. The brand isn't saying we're the heroes of the story. It's you're the hero of the story thanks to using our brand. Our brand is the thing that helps you become the hero and overcome your challenges. Now, the way that you can really connect with an audience in this sense of things and like build characters in your stories is like, firstly, with the Mucinex example is like, think about the experiences that these characters go through and that your audience goes through. Like try to connect similar experiences. Now in movies, they often like they can go very outlandish and like set stories in alternate worlds. In business, in marketing in particular, we try to ground it in reality so that people can really see themselves as like, oh, that's exactly like what I went through. That is exactly what I had to deal with recently. You're also thinking about the values, like the values that they care about. I know I mentioned it before, but thinking about like what's important to them, like what kind of things, like are they people that care about sustainability? Are they people that care about like getting fit, for example? Like Nike, their slogan of "Just Do It" is a great war cry for people to overcome the villain of laziness or of sedentary lifestyle. So thinking about the values, like what's important to the people here, the goals as well. So the goal of like, what is the end goal of the character? What are they trying to achieve? So in the Mucinex commercials, they are trying to overcome the villain of feeling sick. But overall, it can all be encapsulated in one word, is like have characters that have a desire, right? In every single great story, the main character has some kind of desire, right? So Luke Skywalker at the start of Star Wars had the desire of becoming something bigger and more important. You can even think about it in relation to a lot of the characters. Well, Gus from Psych, I mean, like, I'm vaguely remembering the first season of Psych where I think he was just trying to like hook up with like one of the police officers. So maybe not the best example that I can use in this situation for business, but you know, a lot of like the characters have like a kind of desire. Sometimes it's something along the lines of like, I want to just be something bigger than I am right now, or I want to get out of this town. I want to be I want to be successful. I want to be a more confident person. I want to, you know, they have this desire. They have this dream to do something more, and that's where we often find ourselves. Every single person can relate to that. Every single person has a desire that they want to achieve, and if you're able to connect with people with similar desires, they're more likely to then engage with you, whether that be hire you, whether that be invest in your business, or whether it's buy your product. So now I want to jump into story structure. You can see I've spent so much time talking about the controlling idea and the audience. And that's because those are the two most important things in any story. Actually, I'm going to very quickly take you through just one story structure that's available to you, which is just known as like, it's the simple 3-act structure you'll see in a second. The reason why I'm only spending a small amount of time here is that, again, if you understand that foundational controlling idea plus your audience, your stories you'll find will grow quite naturally from there. The thing that story structure, all that story structure does is that it trims it a little bit. It refines it. It adds the gloss. It adds the varnish on top of it, right? The story structure is just there to make sure that you're not including information that's irrelevant or like going on tangents that don't make sense, that you are still maintaining something that's natural from your controlling idea and that relates to the audience. So that's why I'm only going to spend like a few minutes on the structure. I'll be sharing these slides anyway, just so that you can refer back to them. But let me just take you through the simple 3-act structure. I'm sure if you've ever done like a writing class or anything like that, you've probably seen something like this before. I'm going to quickly go through some of these points. The first one is known as exposition. Exposition is basically the setting that you're going to set your story in. It's the thing that's going to place it's going to place your characters into a world and therefore place your audience into the world. I have like this image here of Tatooine, which was the location of where we first meet Luke Skywalker. It's just basically giving the background, the information, all of the kind of the general things that you need to know about the world that you're talking about. In storytelling for business, the exposition sometimes actually doesn't need to be explicit, because sometimes your customers or the people that you're talking to will actually build the world for themselves. What I mean by that is, go back to 1,000 Songs in Your Pocket, right? 1,000 Songs in Your Pocket. It's not saying, imagine if you're running down the street and like you've got your headphones in. It allows the audience to build the world, to create the exposition themselves. So sometimes you don't necessarily need to create this, but if you're telling broader stories, you may want to start thinking about like, how do I explain the background behind this? How do I explain the current situation? What's the current world? So again, going back to the idea that I had for sustainable cutlery for businesses, maybe the world that I'm talking about is like the world that like New York is one of the filthiest cities in the US. It should be better. You know, every Tuesday, if you're walking along, especially during coronavirus, you'll see like just bags and bags of like plastic forks, of cutlery, of like pizza boxes, just like left on the side of the streets ready for collection. This is creating a huge amount of trash. It's causing the streets to stink during the summer. it's causing landfills to be filled, you may want to set that setting to then start talking about the product itself. So think about like, what is the setting, the period, the duration, the location? Why is this setting not good enough? Like, what needs to be improved from this? A story that talks about an awesome world and it's just going to get better isn't a great story. If you've ever watched a movie where like the hero is already amazing and they can do everything already, and that they don't come across as challenges, it can be entertaining. It's not going to be memorable, and it's not going to be as enthralling. It can oftentimes get a little bit boring. But if you think about a character that constantly, and a world that has challenges, where it's not good enough, where there's something wrong in that world. I saw John Wick was listed as like one of the characters that people liked. John Wick, somebody called out, oh, John Wick's that invincible character. And it's like, he's not, though. He's a flawed character. You can see him getting beaten up, and he overcomes those challenges, and he has to overcome even greater foes as his story continues. You know, your characters will eventually overcome this, especially in business. You want your audience, like your customers, to overcome their challenges. You want the business that you're speaking to hire you. At the end of the story is the hero wins. It's always going to be that way in storytelling for business, but you want to give them enough of a challenge that they feel like that they need to take action, that there's something that needs to be done, a right that needs to be wronged. The right that needs to be wronged is known as the inciting incident. And basically the inciting incident is the thing that kicks off the primary cause for our heroes to take action. What is the moment that made them feel like, I'm fed up, I need to do something about this? You know, if you don't give some kind of moment, an instantaneous moment for somebody to stand up and take action, they'll never take action then. And oftentimes an inciting incident in business speak is often a trigger for them, something that will make them go like, oh, this moment has happened, I need to do this thing. One great inciting incident that's used in storytelling that I absolutely love is Kit Kat. Anybody know what Kit Kat's tagline is? I'm looking at the chat box if anybody. Give me a break. Close. Have a break, have a Kit Kat, right? Give me a break, have a break. So one of the things that they wanted to do there was Kit Kat and their marketing company decided that they wanted to have an inciting incident in every single story, which was somebody taking a break, right? They wanted to associate taking a break with having a Kit Kat. In every single ad that they had, it was somebody being fed up, somebody being frustrated, somebody being inundated at work or at home. And then they just decided, I need to do something about it. I'm going to take a break and have a Kit Kat. And instantaneously they feel better. It's a very simple story, but that's the kind of the inciting incident, the trigger that they wanted everybody to feel. A lot of businesses do this. Like there was a great book by Jonah Berger, who's a professor at Wharton Business School, who spoke about, if you actually look at how frequently somebody talks about Disneyland versus Cheerios, Cheerios is actually spoken about more frequently because their trigger, their inciting incident is breakfast. What is something that people have on a daily basis? Breakfast. What is an inciting incident that everybody can relate to? Feeling hungry in the morning, right? It's an incident that then causes people to have simple conversations about Cheerios, right? You may not think that Cheerios is as exciting as Disneyland, but because of those triggers, because of those inciting incidents, they come to the top of mind. They're things that people will share and talk about as a result. If you're thinking about for like job interviews or that kind of thing, oftentimes you get asked questions of like, tell me about a time that you overcame a challenge. Or if you're thinking about like pitching to investors, oh, Jonah Berger's teaching you viral marketing. He's fantastic. Absolutely love Jonah Berger. I did like a 2-week course in Wharton Business School that he was on, and he was fantastic. So one thing about your inciting incident is think about the best moment that you've ever had with something. Think about the worst moment you've ever had with something. think about the first moment you ever had with something and the last moment you ever had with something. So for example, here, let's just say if somebody asks you, tell us about a time where you overcame a challenge at work, right? Very quickly, you need to think about, like, what was my best moment? What was my best moment? What was the worst challenge I ever had to overcome? What was the last challenge I had to overcome at work? What was the first challenge I overcame at work? And thinking about these, you can then pick one of these to craft a story around, to tell a story around. These often then as well, if you're thinking about, I was speaking to somebody who does this thing called Undoc, which is a calendar management system that goes across Google Calendar, Outlook Calendar, and all of these different calendar systems. And basically it has an API system that pulls in all of the information, collates it, connects it. But what he decided his inciting incident was really simple, was like, I spent a month trying to get on a call with one person. Why does it take a month to get on a call with one person? That's why I created this business. And that's why I know that there are other people like me out there that get frustrated by trying to set up meetings. It should be instantaneous. And he basically talks about his last moment where he literally was in an office and he goes, I'm fed up with this. I'm going to do something about it. That was his inciting incident. When he tells the story, he puts people in similar situations like that they feel, this is the last time I'm going to do this. I'm going to sign up to Undoc to make sure that this doesn't happen anymore. Very quickly then, once you've gone through the inciting incident, you have what's rising action. I mentioned about taking people through emotions. So bringing them from one emotion to another. Basically what rising action means is like increasing the stakes as the story goes on. What this means in business is actually that you want to get them from a low arousal emotion to a high arousal emotion. You want to take them from this feeling of either contentment, life's okay, but it could be better, or sadness, life's tough right now, but we can make it amazing for you. You want to get them to a high arousal emotion. You don't start them at a high arousal emotion, you start them at a low emotion. Like with the camping example, I mentioned to you about frustration at the start. I addressed the frustration, but then I brought you to, and it's going to be amazing. It's going to be a week that you'll never forget. Bring them to high arousal. That's rising action. You want to bring them from one place of low arousal to high arousal. That's why order is important of your story. You move them along from low to high. You don't start at high. Also as well, if you've ever watched a movie where the best scene in the movie, the highest arousal moment is in the middle of the movie, you kind of lose interest then in the movie. And sometimes you walk away thinking, like that movie was great up until that point. And then after that, I don't really remember much, right? It's important to kind of like make sure that you're bringing up the arousal through the story, continually increasing. One thing to avoid when telling stories as well is stop adding in information that you think is important but not relevant directly to this story and directly to this audience. It's like when you're watching a TV show and a character comes back to life for no reason. It's like you've run out of ideas. You just want to like add in a twist for the sake of adding in a twist. Get rid of things like this. People see through that. They don't think that you have a direction. Remove anything that feels like that it's just an add-on to the story. Oftentimes this means removing something that may feel important to you, but it's not important to the audience. It's not important for your story. The way that I would look at it is like, if your story flows organically, it's like, first this happened, so then I took this action, but I then came across this challenge, therefore I took this final action, right? It flows naturally. There's no like, and then just jumping in with additional scenes and additional characters and additional talking points. It all flows naturally. Actually, if you ever, so my advice here is anything that doesn't serve the story has to go. Like if it doesn't serve the story, if it doesn't add value to the story, get rid of it, right? Mucinex does other things than stop a chesty cough, but in their commercial, they won't say every single thing that it does. Something can be sustainable and affordable, but you don't need to say affordable to certain audiences because they're worried about sustainability. For another group, they don't care about sustainability. You want to talk about affordability. The climax. So what definitive actions do the characters have to make So in this situation, are they investing with your company? Are they hiring you? Are they buying your product? How are the characters different than they were at the beginning? If you remember at the beginning, you want to get them from the low emotion to a high emotion. How are they different? How is their world subsequently different? And the best way to figuring that out is looking at your controlling idea. Remember the ideal world that you've created in the controlling idea. The end of your story should be working towards that controlling idea. To sense check whether you've got a good story, think about what would happen if your characters did nothing. Now imagine like you've written your story, you've kind of put pen to paper. Now think to yourself, well, what if they don't do anything? What if they don't take any action? And if you say to yourself, well, their lives wouldn't be too much different, then there's a problem, because that means a couple of things. Firstly, they could go for a competitor because you haven't given them enough of an impetus to say, hey, if you don't take this action, your life will be worse because of this. And then the second thing as well is that they won't see the need. They may see the want, they may not see the need then to take action and to purchase this product, do this thing, right? So that then reduces the desire that comes about in your story. So if your character does nothing and the end is still the same, then you need to go back and reevaluate your story. The one thing I also say as well is that there's a very clever technique in movies that's applied to business all the time called the ticking clock, which basically means is that you have to drive urgency as well. It's the times where in an infomercial you see like, and if you buy right now, you get this other thing for free. If you've ever watched the original Star Wars, Star Wars A New Hope, ends with the Death Star is about to destroy the Rebel base. And there's a countdown, Luke Skywalker gets there just in time. That was not in the original cut. The original cut actually just had the rebels attacking the Death Star. The Death Star was not attacking anything. It was just sitting there, right? And they sent it to a test audience. And the test audience said, well, why should we care? Why can't they just go back again afterwards, right? And they recut the end to add in this aspect of like, oh, there's a rush. It needs to be done. There's a time element. It made the ending more exciting. It made it more necessary for Luke Skywalker to blow up the Death Star. It made it more important for everybody to take action, to do something about it there and then. And it's the same with business as well. If you rewatch Star Wars A New Hope, at the end, you will never actually see somebody on camera verbally saying, oh, we are in, like the Death Star is 5 minutes away. It's dubbed over. They reused shots where it was just people looking stern. They reused shots and just dubbed over so that they could add in this element of urgency, right? And that made it a more compelling end. It made it a more compelling conclusion, and adding in this time-sensitive piece, adding in an urgency into your story that you're trying to sell. So it's like if you're selling cough medicine like Mucinex, hey, this is only going to get worse. Act now so it doesn't get worse and that you can go on living your life again. Include some element of urgency. It will make the climax much more exciting. One final thing, I know I've gotten a little bit over, but how to open and close a story. So one thing is, especially if you're pitching to investors or if you're trying to sell something, one thing I'll say is that you need to remember two things. Firstly, a good opening. You, like that old saying that you don't have a second chance to make a first impression. Have a very strong opening. This is also part of presentation skills as well. But if you have a very strong opening that you are passionate about, where you have a very clear idea of, you will get up in front of any audience and proudly state that, and you start confidently, and that will help you continue on confidently. It will also help hook in your audience and make them compelled to keep listening to you. The thing as well then that you want to get to is make sure that you have a very strong closing as well, as strong as the opening. Because imagine if you, again, thinking about movies where the end is a bit weak, right? You don't walk out of that movie going like, oh, that was fantastic. You walk out going, that was good, but like that last 20 minutes was a bit weird, wasn't it? Like that was it was a pretty terrible way to end the movie. It's the same with storytelling in business. It's like the thing that people remember is the last thing that you share with them. It's that closing scene that will make them stand up and take action. It's the standing ovation that you get. It's the thing that makes them go, oh yes, I want to do this now, or I want to participate. I want to hire this person. If you do a great story, but then you leave it a little bit flat, they're not going to be as passionate about it, and they're not going to be able, they're not going to share that story afterwards. So if you are able to memorize your opening and your closing, the rest of the story will come naturally. You can deviate every once in a while. You can change things up slightly, but the opening and closing, strong opening and closing, means that you will tell a great story, and you will walk in there and you will say your opening confidently, you will close confidently, and no matter what the result is, you'll know that no matter what the result is, that you've done yourself justice. With that, I know I've gone slightly over, but I'd love to answer any other questions that people have. Feel free to come off mute as well if you want.
So yeah, if you want to come off mute, just raise your hand and then I can unmute you. Any takers? Come on, I know you guys have questions.
Well, I hope that this was helpful at least. So one thing that I'll do is, Sarah, I'll send you across the list of books, and if you want to share with the group afterwards, along with like the presentation or anything else like that.
Will do, absolutely. Jessica, did you have a question? I saw you doing thumbs up. Let's see.
Hi, Dave.
Hey, Jessica.
Hi, thanks for sharing. It's a very interesting presentation, and I don't know if my question is appropriate, but I'm just curious. So you talk about how you can do the storytelling process when you're doing a job interview by introducing yourself and telling your story. So I was wondering if you could share with us, how would you do your elevator pitch or your storytelling when you are interviewing yourself at the beginning of the interview process?
I'll actually go a step before that, which is to the CV actually. So one thing that I did a while ago was I worked with I went to Dartmouth and actually worked with a bunch of students in Dartmouth on their CV, because there was a stat that I saw recently that the average amount of time spent on a CV in the US is 12 seconds, right? 12 seconds is the average amount of time that somebody will look at your CV. So what we were working on was like, hey, like, how do you create an opening paragraph of your CV that gives a great elevator pitch about you and gets everything that you want to get across in that 12 seconds that will compel somebody to read on. Now, the advice that I ended up giving them was that, firstly, one of the things that we want to see from CVs are, people want to see, what kind of skills do you have? What kind of achievements have you done? And like, what kind of values that you have? So for me, I actually opened my CV not saying like, oh, I worked at TikTok or I worked at Google. I say, I am a passionate storyteller and I love presenting. I want to empower more people to be great storytellers. I want to help facilitate them in being, in connecting with their audiences and feeling more confident in the message that they have to share. That's how, those aren't the exact words, but that's roughly how I open my CV. Because then I start going, and with that, I have really focused on my skills of XYZ. That's what brought me to TikTok. At TikTok, I felt like that I was working for an environment that was about empowering storytellers. At Google before that, I was doing that as well. I was working on a global team that allowed me to share stories from all over the world, bringing together people from diverse backgrounds and giving them a voice. I want to continue doing this, and this is why I'm coming to you today, right? So the work that you're doing right now, or my degree that I had, isn't a central part of that. Again, it's facts. it's fact that I work at TikTok. It's a fact that I worked at Google. It's a fact that I went to university, but it's the story that I tell around it. And I tried to sum that up in about like a 200-word intro paragraph, which takes like a few seconds to read. And that's what got me my job at TikTok. It was that kind of thing of like just being able to very quickly state that in a way that's going to compel people to go, this is interesting, I'm going to read on, or even to the point where they go, this is interesting, I need to talk to this person.
Thank you for sharing. Great tips.
Excellent. I see that there was a message, a question here. When you think you have a great story to implement in your team's marketing efforts, how'd you go getting others on board with your idea? That's a really, really great question. I think like one thing that I've learned often when it comes to especially collaborative environments are great for kind of testing out your messaging and like trying to, tweak what you already have, changing what you already have, and improving on it. But sometimes you may actually be working in an environment where you feel like you've got something, but it's such a rigid environment that it may be harder to tell that story. But maybe one of the things that you could do is like, you've got a great marketing story that you want to tell, right? But maybe the way that you then pitch that story to somebody else within your business is to actually tell them a totally different story as well, is to actually then almost like use your storytelling skills to then go to them and go like, hey, let me tell you where this story comes from and like how it comes from a source of truth and how other people are going to connect with it. And you then tell that story about the story that you want to tell. I think that's, that's where there's a little bit of extra work there, but I think like, again, the things about connecting with your audience, understanding your audiences are going to be essential here again. You need to understand like what may be their reasoning for not thinking that this is the best story. What may be their goals? What may be their wants and needs? Is somebody specifically like pushing down your story because they're worried that like you might get that promotion in the next cycle versus them? Then that becomes a different kind of conversation that you need to have with the team. Maybe it's that they came up with a story like that before and it didn't work. So I think understanding the audience again becomes so vital there. So other ones, what you're currently working on at TikTok. So I work on a lot of partnerships. So I work on a bunch of different partnerships, working on trying to figure out how we just kind of create a safe user environment and an environment that enable storytellers. So I'm working on a lot of creativity and innovation partnerships, a few diversity, equity, and inclusion partnerships, that kind of thing. I am a horror movie fanatic, but I recently noticed that most horror movies are becoming very predictable while telling the story. What are some of the key elements that you would give to make that story memorable and unpredictable, and how you would apply it to business? So I think oftentimes when it comes to like a lot of stories, especially in businesses, we are so used to the same stories over and over again. We expect the same outcomes. We expect these same things that happen over and over again. But one of the things that I always say is like, as you've been like honing your storytelling skills, like tweaking like, or like adding in like a little bit of an interesting like thing into the mix, where maybe you present somebody with a story, but the introduction makes them think that they're hearing one kind of story, but actually you're telling them a totally different story. So what I mean by this is, if any of you have seen recently the movie Knives Out, Knives Out is it's a movie by Rian Johnson that came out last year. It's a fantastic movie. The movie starts making you think that it's a murder mystery movie, that you're going to be like wondering, oh, like who is the villain, like trying to figure it out yourself. And then halfway through the movie, they tell you who did it. They tell you who did it, right? So instantly your audience goes, oh, hang on, wait, this is different than what I thought it was going to be. And actually what you were showing them was a cat and mouse movie. Like a movie where it's like, oh, will the detective figure it out? Will the detective actually get the get the person who actually committed this thing. So then your audience is like, it's still, again, the controlling idea is exactly the same. It's just the story has gone off on a different thread than they expected. And then one of the genius things that he does, and I don't recommend this for business, but one of the genius things that he does is that towards the end, he flips it back to a whodunit. He flips it right back to whodunit. And that's one of my favorite movies of last year, because it was one of the few movies that made me go, oh, wow, that was different. But the thing is, though, is that he used the same storytelling techniques, but he just flipped it in just one or two places and like surprised people with the direction that he took things. The outcome was still the same. There's still the same outcome that we would have got if he had just told a normal linear story. But the way that he flipped it was interesting. Another way that, like, if you're thinking of horror movies, right? M. Night Shyamalan, did a great one with Sixth Sense, right? Everybody knows Bruce Willis was the ghost, right? That was flipping horror on its head. We thought that this was a ghost movie when actually the main character that we've been following along was a ghost, right? That's why it has remained in the zeitgeist, why we remember that movie, is not because of the fact that the overarching story was completely different. It's because there was just one little tweak. You take something that people expect and you just tweak it a little bit. The Sixth Sense, if you watch it back without that twist, it's a pretty okay movie. But with that twist, it becomes a great story that people talk about afterwards. Sorry, there's loads of questions now coming at me. So I think the next one was, as a comedian, how do you use comedy in storytelling? Is comedy more compelling or useful in certain situations over others? The best thing that I learned from comedy is a great way of looking at things from new angles. Like literally taking something, flipping it upside down and going, huh, isn't that strange? Like a lot of the comedians that I've worked with, or the fact that I was on stage with Jerry Seinfeld, like he's observational. One of the jokes that he said when I was performing with him was he goes like, what the hell is a pre-meeting? You're still in a meeting room, so it's a meeting, but it's about another meeting. So how can you have a meeting which is called a pre-meeting? There's no such thing as a pre-meeting. It's just a meeting. Just call it a meeting, right? It's a very simple thing, but it's like, yeah, that's true. It's funny because it's true, right? So it's just like the comedian's kind of sense there is taking what we see in the everyday and just kind of poking at it going, hang on, why is this? Why is it like this? And I think like if you're trying to do that in business, sometimes the way to do it is like, I saw, if you've ever seen SoFi, the online bank, like the app banking, app investments, that kind of thing. One of the things that they did was like, they did a great thing in some of their original ads, which was like, hang on, if my money is online, why do I have to go into a bank to do these things? What the hell's that about? And that they kind of poked fun at that. They used comedy to play off of that. So I think it's really about just taking what is everyday, what we have seen as normal, and just kind of going like, hang on, why is that? Why is that the case? And then trying to poke fun at that. Do you think technology is changing the art of storytelling? Absolutely, absolutely. TikTok, for example, you can tell a very compelling story in 15 seconds on TikTok, right? The other thing as well with technology is that it's giving people tools that they can create stories that previously were not possible. If you think 20 years ago, if you said to people, hey, in your pocket, you are going to have editing software, you're going to have sound design software, you're going to have like a studio quality camera all rolled into one device, they would have gone, you're nuts, get out of here. What are you doing in my home? So like, that's where technology is taking us. I think what it's going to do is that we're going to have more storytellers. And the great thing is that we're going to have storytellers coming from more diverse backgrounds. Going to film school is a costly thing, right? So you've had a lot of people coming from good, well-to-do backgrounds where they can pay 50 to 100 grand to go to these schools. Now you have people with phones in their pockets telling their stories. The only thing that this is going to do is create more storytellers and be able to diversify messages that we're hearing. And that is really what is truly exciting about what technology is doing to storytelling. I'm active in political world, but I noticed that a great deal of campaigns are the same. Colors are the same. If you look at movie posters as well, movie posters, the majority of summer blockbusters use orange and blue in their movie posters. It's inciting, it's an emotional thing, it's an emotional connection, it makes us think it's exciting. In your professional opinion, in what ways can you create a memorable political campaign that does not blend in? Would you do anything unorthodox? The thing, funnily enough, I actually was talking to people back in Ireland. There was like political campaigns recently in Ireland. And one of the things that we were talking about is that political campaigns are often very polished, right? They're very much like, hey, this is the politician and I'm going to speak in a certain tone of voice because a team of people behind me have told me that this tone of voice resonates best, right? And the problem is that how much distrust is there now in politicians? How much distrust is there in politics right now? And I think like one of the things that we were talking about and like what I was advising some of the folks back in Ireland was that it's like with all of this new technology, with all of these new ways of telling stories, don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Like actually being able to say like, hey, I am just a person. I am flawed, but this is what I stand for. This is the things that are important to me. And don't be feel ashamed to be passionate, to show passion, and to be a little bit vulnerable every once in a while. You'll see a lot of the political movements right now are by candidates that are actually being way more open and transparent with how quickly they respond to messages. There's people, you know, everybody from AOC to Trump, whatever your political perception is, they're active, they're constantly talking on social media, they're communicating with people, they're telling their stories in very open manners that I think a lot of politicians haven't done before. And I think there's going to be an increasing amount of openness, but I think it's going to be important there where candidates are really, again, working on their controlling idea of like, what is their message that they want to get across and that their stories come from that. But, you know, politics is a complicated area. Things have changed so wildly there that, I mean, I know back in Ireland, when I was talking to people about this in particular, they had, for one politician, he had a team of 7 people advising him on his message. And his message then became so muddled that I had no idea what he was trying to say, because it was like a mixture of all of these different ideas. And all I thought of was like, if you had just gotten rid of all of those and just spoke for yourself, we would have heard exactly what you stand for, and we would have heard your story. What you've learned from stand-up, anything that you apply to your career or day-to-day life. Thing that I apply mostly to my day-to-day life from stand-up is like, don't take myself too seriously. Like, you know, the world is stressful enough. I don't need to worry about like, you know, making sure that everything I do is totally polished. And like, do you know what? I think at the end of the day, if like, one of the things is like, my kind of comedy was very self-deprecating. If you can't laugh at yourself, what can you laugh at? So that's the kind of thing that I take into work as well. In the presentation, you spoke about invoking emotion. How do you invoke emotion in interviews without being negative? I think again, it's the positivity thing. Like, you can invoke emotions by going like, you know, what really inspires me about your company is that you appear to be moving in this direction. I really admire that. I want to be a part of that. I want to take that and run with it. I want to build on top of it. I want to make sure that you guys get to the peak of being able to achieve this. I want to change the world. The emotions there, like it's excitement, it's enthusiasm. And you're bringing them again, you're bringing them up through the rising emotion there. I think like if you try to get negative, the way to do negativity in job interviews is take them from a negative emotion to a positive one. So if they ask you a question of like, tell us about a time that this thing happened, like that you had to work collaboratively, tell them about a time that you were working on a project and somebody just kept on dropping the ball and was frustrating you. But you know what? You sat them down, you talked through them, you understood that there were other things going on in their life. Next thing, they're really active with you. They're participating with you. They're doing great. Bring them to that positive emotion. The other thing I would say is that if you are talking about other people and other businesses, I always try to say in interviews, like try to talk about the positives of others and positives of other businesses, even competitors, but always kind of show like, hey, like, yeah, they're good, but they're not you. They're not you. You're great. And like, yeah, other people that you're interviewing, they're good, but they're not great like me. And I think like maintaining that kind of level of positivity really helps as we go through. Sarah, I'm going to jump over to you because we've gone like way over time. So I don't know if I have time for all of the other questions.
There are no more questions actually, so I think you're good. You cover them all. So thank you so much for that and for doing this presentation. It honestly could not have come at a better time as everyone is looking for a job and they're going to be telling their own story in interviews. So thank you so much for sharing all your insight and wisdom with us. I just want to take note of next week's presentation will be actually on Thursday instead of Friday, and it will be featuring Dominica Baird, Director of Trends at Maybelline, which is a part of L'Oreal. And even if you're not interested in beauty products, she'll be talking about insights and trends and targeting and segmentation and product innovation. So definitely it'll be a great, interesting and really important session. So please register for that. And thank you again, Dave. It was so much fun spending this time with you, and I'll be sending out everyone your presentation when I get it. So look out for that in your email.
Yeah, and I'll also send over that list of books as well if it's helpful. Excellent.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yay.
No problem at all. Thanks you all soon.
Have a good one, everyone. Bye. Thank you.